What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks episode number 2. And I'm joined here by my friend and former student, Mr. David Fuchs, coming to us live from Jersey City, NJ, my old
Oh,
home.
yeah,
We can see a little bit of the skyline in the background. I'm
I know.
coming to
Sorry,
you.
I make sure to leave a little bit
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
skyline just for you.
Make us want it just a little bit, right? Um, but I'm coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. It's the evening by you. It's already sundown. It's still sun up here in sunny LA. And today we're going to talk about probably one of the most frustrating things to deal with when you are prepping for the CFP exam, burnout. And we're going to talk a little bit about why it happens, how do you recognize it, the different types of burnout that end up happening, and then what do you ultimately do when burnout happens? Do you just quit on the process? Do you give up? When do you give up? When do you keep pushing through? How do you get yourself reset so you can get yourself mentally there? Because I know that burnout it's a real thing, and anybody that tells you that it's not a real thing is lying. It is definitely a real thing. So um, let's just chat this through, David. So you studied for multiple exams.
hmm
I've studied for way more exams than I've ever thought that I would take.
hmm
And I'm just gonna chat through so I started in financial services in 2006. I took my series 7, which was the first exam that I took. SIE didn't exist then. Then I
hmm
took the 66. Then I took my life and health. I took my series 3.
That's a lot of tests.
Yeah. Then I took my CFP. And
hmm
then I took a very long break where I didn't take any exams for a while. And then I came back and I took CFA level 1, 2, and 3. So I've studied for a lot of exams, obviously outside the scope of college, all during my working years. And burnout is real. And I probably, level 2 and 3 of CFA were probably the ones that I really felt that I was on the verge of quitting. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was so burnt out. I remember my last week of studying for CFP, I think I almost had a mental breakdown and started throwing everything because I was getting to
Me
that
too.
point of burnout. Um, and I think we all get there. I think for a lot of us, it happens more so at the end of studying, more so than the beginning. I think you're probably a little motivated. It's exciting. You're embarking on this journey, and then once the novelty wears off, you start to kind of feel the heaviness of studying all the time, not going out, all those types of things. For me, it was the not going out was a really big contributor. Like, I'm a social being.
hmm
I talk for a living. I was in sales originally, and so not interacting with humans and having to sit at my dining room table at night drove me bananas. And I think that's what kind of contributed. What was it for you?
What was it for me? Um, so I would say that, going, well, let me preface this with this. As I was going towards the end of the exam, so 3 weeks out, right?
Mhm.
I had basically a perfect storm of things that just hit me all at the same time. And I just want to say this just to make it a little relatable to people so they know that this is real life. 3 weeks before the exam, obviously that is, crunch time when you need to do kind of like your absolute grind. That's when you're absolutely doing, balls to the walls. I got a puppy, an 8 week old puppy,
Mm.
3 weeks before the exam, and then 2 weeks before the exam, I'm now going back into the office, and my head, I just remember my head was spinning. Okay,
How long were you out of the office? How long did they
a
keep you
long
out?
time, 2 years, and we went back in.
Yeah.
So we left the office March 2020. We went back in March 2022, right when the cycle started.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember they were like, "We're going back in next month," and I'm like, "Well, great." I'm going back into the office 3 weeks before I'm about to take the exam, or a week before, I think,
Yeah.
or the week of.
Yeah.
So all that hit me at one time, and I don't think you can have more of a burnout than I did the week, I would say 2 weeks before the exam, going back into the office. What got me through it, and this is kind of what I wanted to bring to the table tonight in terms of getting through the burnout, was you need to kind of envision what it's going to look like in the end. And that's how I got through it, was hitting submit, thinking about hitting submit on the exam, that, for that last question, and walking out and just feeling that huge weight off your shoulder.
Hmm. All right. So let's play a little game of, if I knew now what I knew. Wait, if I knew
If I knew
now,
now what
if
I
I
knew
knew
then.
then
Or
what
no,
I know
if I
now,
knew then what I
right?
knew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, yeah. Let's Joe's a math guy. He doesn't do words.
No.
I don't do words good. What would you have done differently to maybe prevent some of that burnout?
It's maybe it's tough because I could say I wouldn't have gotten the puppy, but
All right.
but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but that's I can't really
But now
say
he's your
that.
best bud, so you
Yeah,
can't be
yeah,
mad.
yeah. My yeah, he'd be upset with me. And
Yeah.
going back into the
Is
office with
he in the room? Like, cover his ears
he's
or
in his
muff him?
room. He's got the
Ear
earbuds
muff
on.
him.
Um, but going back to the office is not necessarily my fault. What would I do differently? I mean, listen, I think that every time people go through, whether it's this exam or whether it's going through college education, or whether it's going through even like some of the licensing exams, everyone comes through and they say, you know what, I wish that I put a little more time in early on, or I wish I kind of paced myself better, so at the end I didn't have to maybe cram. And I didn't necessarily feel like I was cramming, but maybe if you learn it earlier, or if you start to plant the seeds earlier, it makes it easier for you the last few weeks, because we're talking about burning out now. That's kind of the theme of this
Right.
episode.
Yeah.
And I think the main reason you don't want to burn out is because you don't want to get to the finish line. Like, you don't want to be a running back and be blowing past the defense and then burn out on the 5-yard line.
Yeah,
And
for
that's
sure.
kind of like this. Like, you don't want to be crushing it and going crazy and, really kind of killing yourself the first 2 months, 2.5 months, 3 months, and then get to the week before or 2 weeks before and start to feel like, I can't really push through to the end of the finish line. So
Yeah.
I think setting yourself up for success early with a very clearly defined roadmap and following that plan is so key.
Yeah. It's funny. I had a student for CFP and CFA do something similar to this, which is, and I knew it was happening with them,
Mhm.
but I couldn't stop it because, and these were students that I saw one-on-one. And this happens a lot less in a group setting, because being in a group setting, you never want to fall behind. And I know when I'm in a group, if I'm in a group class at CrossFit, if I'm in a group anywhere,
Mhm.
I never want to be the worst person in class ever.
Right.
But in a
Mhm.
one-on-one setting, there's no measuring bar. And this happened when I was tutoring 2 people one-on-one, where we had laid out a plan, and I was taking them through and trying to pace it, but we were working against the clock for both of these people. And
Mhm.
and I said to them, like, the more that we can front load, I said, even though we're on a short window, and for one of these people, it was CFA, I believe it was a level 1 student. I think we had 10 weeks, which, if you've ever taken level 1 of CFA, you know that that's a pretty short window. That is much better done over 3 to 6 months, depending on your knowledge level. But the CFP student, we were working against a 6-week window for them to
Mhm.
get through.
Oh, wow. That's
And
short.
yeah, it was short, and they were working, they started slow because they were coming in under the impression that they knew a lot more than they did.
Mhm.
And then it was kind of like, that moment, the light bulb moment, the like, holy shit, what did I just do to myself? Like I bit off way more than I can chew. And then I could see it like right at week 3, it was like the panic set in. And instead of, initially I was like, we need 3 hours a day. Like you cannot violate that. It has to be 3 hours a day. And it was just like a work thing come up. And then it was my anniversary. And then there was this wedding. And I'm like, they shouldn't have been taking the exam. And it made my life very difficult in working with them. But that last, at week 3, they started picking it up.
Mm-hmm.
And we're almost halfway at that point. We're 2 weeks down. And at week 3, they're starting to put in, they're like, all right, I'm not going to do 3-hour days. I'm going to do 6-hour days. And this is where, for most people, they burned out, where, by the end, it was impressive because he got to the score on the practice exam that I wanted him to get to, which was an accomplishment all of itself.
Yeah.
He would show up to class with bags under his eyes, and I could see it. And I knew that those 6 to 7 hour days, he was going to burn out. And he failed the exam by a couple of questions.
Yeah.
It wasn't even like the knowledge level wasn't there. It was the cramming that literally caused it. And I think he pooped out like on exam day, where literally he called me after and was like, that back half of that exam, I could barely keep my eyes open.
And that's another thing when you talk about burning out, because you can burn out as you're prepping for the exam. And I know that's, really what we're discussing, but you also can burn out on the exam.
Oh, big time.
And that's what happens, I think, to a lot of people, because I think a lot of people go in and they know what they need to know to pass, but they don't realize that the exam is as long as it. I mean, they know that it's 175 questions and it's 6 hours, but I don't think they know like the mental fortitude that you need and the stamina. I think the stamina is such a big thing with the exam.
Yeah. And that's something that I say all the time. I'm like, building to 170 questions takes stamina.
Totally.
Right. And so if you're doing 25 question practice quizzes and then you jump into 170, by question 50, you're kind of smoked. Because now you just doubled the amount of questions that you were normally taking. And now you're like, I have 120 left.
I know.
Like,
that's why working up, and you can't just start studying and do a practice exam a week later.
Yeah,
it's like you're gonna run the New York City Marathon, and the first day of training or the first week of training, you're just gonna go run 26.2 miles. Like, you're not gonna do that.
But it's like I train Monday to Friday. Saturday, I'm gonna go out for the 26er.
Yeah, right. Like you need to go like 5 miles, then 7.5, then 10, then 15, then 17.5, then 20, and then eventually you get to the full marathon. And that is the best analogy, and that to me is the best advice that I can give somebody that's prepping for the exam, is go at it as if you're training for a marathon. And not everybody here knows the regimen to train for a marathon. I certainly have never ran a marathon, but that's the way you kind of need to do it. You need to build up to 175, because if you don't, it's going to hit you really, really hard on the exam, because it's not just 175 questions. 130 of them or 140 of them are questions that you will.
Did you forget that it's 170, not 175?
170. I was thinking 85. Yeah, 170. I apologize. See, there you go.
That's it. It's out of your mind now. That's it.
170. I apologize. But like I would say like 130, 140 of those are not just a sentence and a half with small answers. A lot of those are going to be like paragraph long questions that you're going to need to comprehend, and you need to really build up that stamina so you don't burn out on the actual exam.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is everybody overestimates how much they can study and underestimates the exam. And
Totally.
that's the problem that to me, the number one cause of burnout is you've overestimated how much you can study and underestimated the exam. Because I don't think what anybody really kind of sits there and thinks about it like, I'm going to sit down for 6 hours and take an
Mhm.
exam. Do you know how much that takes out of you? Like that just mentally takes it out of you where you need to plan recovery. It's like, it's like anything else. Like you would never go to the gym and do your absolute most amount of weight that you can do in the squat and come back and do the same exact workout the next day. You're not maxing out your squat 2 days in a row,
Right.
and the thing is that there are times that you are going to, and I knew guys like this when I was training for Olympic weightlifting. They would max their squat on a Saturday and come back
Mhm.
and do it again on a Sunday. And on Sunday, they would get 5 pounds more.
Mm.
Right. And they would go, oh, yeah, that's what I need to be doing. See, it didn't take out as much as me as I thought. And
Mhm.
then by Tuesday night, they're so
Done.
exhausted
Yeah.
that they can't train for the next couple of days.
Right.
And the number one cause of that, the burnout, like I said, is I can slot in 6 hours a night. No, you can't. Like that's not what a normal human brain can handle because
Mhm.
if we were in college and you're saying I can study 6 hours a day, I'm saying, okay, fine, because you got 24 hours in the day. And if you're in college, you're probably sleeping 8 or 9 or 10 hours a night
Yeah.
because you got nothing else going on. But for the majority of us who are taking this test, if you are not being respectful of what you're doing during the day and the mental stamina that it takes just to get through your day,
Mhm.
plus what you do in the evening, and then you try to cram it, that's where a majority of the burnout starts to happen. You can't make it up in one day. And so you think that you can sit down and I can do anything for 2 months. Yeah, you can do it for 2 months, but at what cost? If you're not sleeping, you're not retaining information. If you're not eating well, you're not going to retain information. I think a lot of people don't understand that we treat our brain like a muscle.
Mhm.
It needs recovery time after you just tax the crap out of it
Totally.
for a 6 hour exam. And it was one of the things that, especially um, with your group, that was very, very eye opening to me because you did have one person in your group that was just a bull nosed, I will sit there and I will do it for 6 hours a day. And that was when like I was like, this is not something that you do by force, you do it by grace. And that's something that is a really hard thing to do. Because I think all of our inclination is if I don't do it by during the week, I'm going to make it up on the weekend.
Yeah. And so such a great point. Such a great point. I have 2 points that I want to like branch off of with that. So number one, and for the people that push maybe plan for a 5 to 7 hour day, I'll leave work at 6 and I'll study till 12, or I'll save it for Saturday and I'll study for 9 hours. Not, I think that works for some people. I think for this exam, personally, that's not the way to do it. Alluding back to what I was saying earlier, I think the better way to approach this is space it out and do like 2 hours. And I know people are going to say, well, it's a CFP. I need to go, nose to the grindstone from the beginning. You don't. And I respect the fact that people want to hustle and grind and really put their all in, but you don't need to do it that way.
Yeah.
I personally think, and Joe, tell me if you agree,
Hmm.
if you space it out over a 3 to 4 month time period and you study the right way, 2 hours to maybe 3 hours a day is all you need. When you get closer to the exam, yes, on a Saturday, you could do 4 hours or maybe 5 if you want, but you don't need to. And
No.
that's what we're saying, where it prevents you from really, really burning out halfway through.
Yeah. I mean, the number one way that I prevent burnout with everybody is by having people prep over 4.5 months, because
Mhm.
what I initially require people to do is I need 2 hours a day, 5 days a week, because I still need you to rest. And I tell people, like, pick one day off during the week and one day off on the weekend,
Yeah.
because you don't want to have to do your CFP every single day of the week. Because
Mhm.
for me, I don't want to do anything on Friday night. I don't. Like, on
Right.
Friday night, I want to be able to go to work, leave, go to the gym, go home and chill out for the rest of the night and get to bed early, work out early on Saturday, and then go about my business. I think that truly, for the people who go in and they grind for 6 hours, I still think you only really get 2 to 3 good hours out of it.
Exactly. You're not getting 6 good hours.
You're not.
When you're doing like 90 minutes at a time, and then maybe you're taking an hour off, and then you get back and do another 45 minutes, that's when you do your best
Yeah.
work. And that's where you're truly getting, a maximum, close to maximum production out of every minute, that you're using.
Yeah.
And,
You
and
can
again,
only do so much in a day. Like,
yeah,
you're not gonna learn all of estate planning in a day.
no.
Don't do it.
And then to another point that I wanted to branch off from what you said earlier is the sleeping aspect. Okay.
Yeah.
Some people, they go to work 9, they get home at 6, and they're like, I'll study till 12 o'clock. I would imagine that once you get to 9 o'clock in your session, you're probably exhausted, and you can drink all the coffee you want. You can have a Red Bull or do whatever. I would imagine you're exhausted after that, from the day, and you're not going to retain as much as you would if you weren't feeling that way. So, point that I'm making is, if you allot 2 to 3 hours after work, as opposed to trying to cram in 6 hours and staying up till midnight, once you get to that point where your eyes are getting heavy, you're not retaining anything. And I always said to myself, when I was going through it in the winter, when I was up studying at night, if I got to the point where my eyes were heavy and I started to get tired, I would just close the computer, I would close my book, and I would go to sleep. And I
Mhm.
would call it a night. And I was okay with that. Some people would try and push through that, saying, no, I need to read this last page. I need to take this last quiz. It's honorable to try and do that, but I don't think you're getting as much out of it as you would if you were give your body a rest, give your brain a rest, and wake up the next morning and do it, or do
Mhm.
it the next night after work. And
Yep.
that's where you prevent some of these burnout phases.
Oh, personally, when I was studying for my last CFA level 3, was the one that I really did the absolute best in terms of my planning, where every night, I did a little bit in the morning, I did a little bit at night, but I never ever studied past 9 p.m.
Yeah, and I didn't either for CFP, 9 or 10 o'clock. Even
Like,
even when I was grinding 2 weeks before, I still wouldn't stay up till midnight, and I wouldn't do 5 hour days.
it's impossible. Like, I mean, and there was definitely times where and again, like, when we're talking about these big exams, like, you just can't make up your hours by cramming. And it's this false idea that everybody has, that, if I need to get to 200 hours, that how you get to those 200 hours is just as important as getting to the 200 hours.
Totally.
Because again, like, you only have like, there's this idea that we can sit for 10 hours, or I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm determined, I'm motivated, I have Adderall. Look, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, if you got Addies, good for you,
You
but
mentioned that
still.
earlier, but I didn't know if you wanted to keep this PG.
Right. But even again, you have a certain amount that your brain can handle in any given day, even if you have access to those, or those are prescribed to you. But what I'm saying is, like, having a Red Bull, like, and doing those things. And again, this idea, this is the exact cause of burnout, is that you think you can do more, in a day. And I think this is the best way to put it. I think people overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what you can do in a week. And I think you need to think about your blocks of time as a week
Mhm.
more so than anything else. And when I plan for students, I do it in week blocks of this is when I'm doing the grand plan, I know what I want them to get done in a week and I work backwards
You're right.
because like if we can kind of chip at it and that's it. So that the chop mentality is really what it comes down to. But I am a big proponent of it. This kind of drives me nuts because everybody that fails CFP has gotten to the point where even if they went in and they were super close, a lot of times they're not failing because of a lack of knowledge. They're failing because you're sitting there and you can't grind through 170 questions when you're already burned out.
Yeah.
By the end of the first half, you're probably walking out.
Done.
You're calling somebody and going, "Yeah, I ain't passing this thing."
Yeah, and I can't stress that enough. Like the burnout is so prevalent on the exam, more so possibly than the actual prepping for the exam. Like people don't not realize, and they may have taken practice exams, like in their basement or in their kitchen or whatever. That's not replicating what's going to actually happen on game day when you get there. You,
How did you know you were burning out when you were burning out? Or how did you know, like, I'm assuming on some exam you probably felt that a bit. So like, what were the signs? How did you know that?
I mean, you start to get restless, you start to get impatient, you start to not think as much as you need to into the question that you're reading. So, some of these estate and plus tax planning questions, you're not getting through that question and you're definitely not understanding the answers. Just stuff starts to get a little bit blurry in your head. Again, you start to get impatient, you start to get frustrated, you start to not recall things as quick.
Mm.
You start, and those are just some of the mental things. In terms of some of the physical things, and this is more on like a daily burnout, you start to get tired. I personally start to get really bad headaches. My vision starts to get blurry. I wear contacts. So my vision starts to get a little bit, blurry with just looking at a screen or looking at a book, just that's those are some of the main, I would say, you know, symptoms of burning out.
You know how I figured out when somebody's burning out? When you two main things. When somebody has to read the question 3 or 4 times because they're not
Yeah,
understanding what it's saying,
right.
because you're not able, like you're so exhausted, it like
Mhm.
hurts to think, and you're like
Yeah.
looking at it and you're like, I know bits and pieces of this, but I can't for whatever put it together. That's one of them. And the second one is kind of the opposite of that. It's when you start overthinking and going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
It could be this, 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 it could be this. And you're like, oh God, like and then you're like, and you kind of like, oh my God, I'm gonna throw my books at the window.
Yeah.
I'm burning out.
Yeah.
So
I
go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, I was gonna say I think the question is the biggest indicator. When you start reading a question and you basically get to the end of it and you have no idea what you just read.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And you look at it again and you don't want to even read the question. You just want to answer it to get it over with because you're
Yeah.
like, I, even if I tried, I'm not getting this right because
Right.
it's just there's too much. And you start like skipping questions and clicking through
Yeah.
and like,
And
let
you're
me
and
find
you
ones that I know.
yeah, and you answer it before you really even, like we always say, you have to really think about these questions and comprehend it. You answer it ha- half-assedly.
Mm,
You don't really think about it. You don't really read the questions. You don't really read the answer. You just click one and you basically hope that you got it right.
all right. Yeah, I'm gonna give you my answer on this, but I want you to answer first because I
Mhm.
know what I tell students to do. You're getting to this point, right? Let's say you're 2 weeks out from the exam and you're getting to this point where like my head hurts. I feel like I'm doing everything right. I'm staying up late. I'm reading. I'm doing questions. I'm doing everything that I should do. What do you do when it sets in? What do you if I was coming to you and asking you, yo, like, what should I do? I'm feeling burnt out. What do I do? What would you tell somebody?
I mean, you referenced it earlier. You have to go get that prescription of Adderall.
Immediately go to drugs.
Hit the streets. No. So this is actually something that I wrote down that I wanted to bring up as a topic if you didn't. So I'm happy you brought it up, to be honest. I think it's okay to, step away and take a break and, do something that, you enjoy doing.
Mm,
Go to the gym. It's all right if you take a break to watch a football game, or it's okay if you take a break to, I mean, I don't personally play video games, but if that's your thing, then you play video games, like whatever. I'm just throwing ideas out there. I think it's okay during this process. A lot of people, I think, make the mistake of, I need to just shut my life down and only do CFP stuff for the next 4 months or 3 months or however long. I didn't stop my life. I still went to the gym every day. I went to a concert 2 weeks before the exam. I didn't stop doing things that made me happy, because that's what ultimately adds energy back into you to get back up on the horse and continue to study. So
mm,
that's my best piece of advice. And I was going to bring that up.
yeah.
I had it written down to bring up
Well,
anyway.
yeah. So I'm gonna answer this in two ways. One, if you want to avoid it, you have to be so meticulous planning it out where you've already built in days off and you continue living your life. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but I said to you guys, like, as you guys started going to review mode, was you have to sleep,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, like, what a lot of people think is, oh, I'm studying for an exam. I need to go balls to the wall. Let's get the coffee and the crack ready. I'm saying, no, you got to start planning out your day so it's so meticulous that you're getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep a night.
Mhm.
So being a master planner means that you're getting to bed on time, you're waking up on time, you're taking care of your nutrition. And I could spend an entire episode talking about just how your nutrition, and not like, eating gummy worms from
Yeah.
7-Eleven at midnight while you're studying is not giving you like energy. I mean, it feels good getting the sugar high, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily the best thing for you.
No.
Um, but the sleep, nutrition, and you have to build days off in from the beginning to the end. And especially those last couple of weeks, you feel like you have to go at it 7 days. That's exactly where it happens. So to avoid it in general, you treat it like a marathon. But what if you're in that position where it does, okay, I'm starting to burn out. What do I do? Number one, sleep. Spent like literally take, I would say, a minimum of 24 hours, but really no more than 72. But I would literally put the books down for 1 to 3 days
Mhm.
and sleep your ass off and go and do fun stuff. Don't go out and get hammered drunk and blackout, but go out to dinner. Have a glass of wine or two with your friends or your family or whoever you enjoy hanging out with. Because when I was studying, like I would go out and I would spend a night out. And I remember my girlfriend at the time was like, "Are you crazy? Like, why you do?" I'm like, "If I don't do this, I will go bananas."
Mhm.
So I'm not having 15 drinks. I'm gonna go and have 2 or 3 and
Yeah.
hang out and laugh, because it kind of alleviates the
Yeah.
anxiety and, so to speak, kind of lets the air out of the balloon. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, so you kind of come back and you feel like, oh, like I feel better.
Yeah.
And um, so sleep, 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 sleep. That is the number one way that you're gonna get back to like a healthy routine. But secondly, get to the gym,
Yeah.
because it alleviates the physical symptoms of burnout and stress, is going and actually pumping good hormones and good endorphins into your body. Like I know for me, within a day or two of going to the gym, I feel instantly better.
Oh, yeah.
I'm ready to rock. So
Totally.
I feel like these are very, very, those are those are superficial. They're not long lasting. They will alleviate the immediate symptoms of burnout. But if you don't have a plan, then you're never going to get to the point where, you're just going to keep burning out and alleviating. Those are band-aid approaches to it, but they're not long-term. The long-term is you got to have a plan, and you got to be a meticulous planner. You have to plan out, and you have to recognize that taking the CFP is a huge undertaking. It changes your life for a period of time. But if you don't want to have to take it a second and third time, you have to be a master planner. Otherwise, you're coming back and taking it a second, a third, a fourth time, because you're going to cram, you're going to burn out, you're going to take the exam, you're going to screw it up, and you're going to come back and you're going to repeat the cycle over and over again. So, I mean, do you have anything else like for immediate burnout relief, besides taking a day or two off, getting to the gym and sleeping?
That was my number one piece of advice that I would give. It would, I know you may not think it is, but people may not think, but it is totally okay to not dedicate every waking available hour during the 3 or 4 month process to CFP. You can do other things. And actually, as you just mentioned, I encourage it. And I think it only adds positive energy and productiveness, if that's a word. It only adds productiveness to your whole process. So
I believe it's productivity, David.
Productivity, there we go.
I mean, this is the math guy correcting you. You should be ashamed of yourself.
So, but no, I think that's a great piece of advice. And I think, people should feel that it's appropriate and acceptable to.
You have to. You got to keep some level of normalcy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean, I remember when I was studying for CFP, I was young. I was still really right out of college. I think I was 24. I might have been 25 when I took it. And my head was just go like ham. Like every day, like ham is and I started, and within a week I realized, I'm like, this is a stupid plan. Like, I would get to work early. I would leave early. I would take a break. Like, remember, like, if you are taking the exam, what you hear on the internet, people say on Instagram, what you read on Reddit is rarely the case of what people are actually doing in their study. And do not feel guilty for doing stuff, for, going away for a weekend. Plan around it. There's a wedding. Don't skip the wedding. Go, unless it's like the weekend of or the weekend before, then, obviously. But like, if this is, 3 months out, you don't not go to a wedding because, you can bring your books with you, obviously, and everything is mobile now. And you can get up early and do it and not, go crazy at a wedding. This process and I just thought about something. But this process doesn't have to be torture for it to be effective. I would argue that it should be enjoyable to the extent that it can be enjoyable, right? Like, I get it. We're studying. It's not, there's 1,000 other things that I'd rather do with my time than study. But, you are investing in your long-term career. Make it enjoyable. Like, this is stuff that you're going to be able to have conversations with your clients for the next 20 or 30 years about. Enjoy the process to the extent that you can. There's some of it that's grueling hard work. That's okay. But it still should be enjoyable. I remember like, nerd moment that I was like, this is actually good because I'm thinking about all the clients that this affected in my practice. I was like already like thinking about like, oh, I can't wait to talk to, and I know, like, I can't wait to talk to Jeff and Dawn about this because they had asked me about it and I didn't really know the answer. Or, I could talk to these clients about this and this and that. So I thought it was enjoyable. But let's end it on this note. To avoid burnout, one word, what would it be?
it's more like 2 words, but I would say, pace yourself, but put them as 1 word.
Okay. Pace, no spaces, yourself.
Pace yourself. Yeah.
Pace yourself. Pace yourself. I'm gonna say, I would say it's discipline. So I like both of those things. Those are both really good. Well, thank you as always, Mr. Fuchs. You've been a gentleman and a scholar,
Absolutely.
and giving us a little piece of the skyline is always enjoyable. So thank you for that.
Let me give you a little more of that.
Oh, don't slow down. That's anywho, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And we will be back next week with more great content for you guys to enjoy and learn more about the CFP exam. Thank you as always, David, and we'll catch you guys later.